So let me...
Careful, because you'll end up being a scribe and you'll have to write them all out.
Wait, I need to...
Put the Indian flag.
Yes.
Hang on. Here we go.
Didn't have breakfast, huh, Michelle?
Well, I did. All right, give me 30 seconds here.
This is why technology in its time, you know, this is a
Really?
demonstration.
It's a demo.
Right, it's a demo. I never, because I remember in the early days of my, when publishing began to go on the internet, trying to do live demos on a dial-up connection in a hotel conference room.
Okay. So your guys's was a webinars. So group size on your method. Well, you better make sure your screen is big enough, right? And that the audio is good. If you have a larger group versus a smaller group. Yeah. All righty. So new versus returning, right? We talked a little bit about this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I've only got about 7 minutes. Do we have special needs for one group? Returning versus new over another? Special accommodations we need to make? We may, right? We may need to go a little slower with our new folks, especially on the tax law stuff. All right, so resources for presentation. You have the NTTC workbook and the slides. Please make modifications if you're going to use their slides. Lincoln Learn, Portland Metro lesson plans. Really useful. They're very useful, well thought out sets of lesson plans.
The website's cashoregon.org.
Mm-hmm. You have the 4012 and the 4491. Your 4491 is in paper. We used it for the test. We did, because it was what we had. And knowing that the 4012 that's out there is a Vita 4012, I didn't trust it. So that's where I went, was the 4491. And I got my military moving expenses wrong too, because the military moving expenses are 18 cents a mile. They're not standard rate. So it's not in either one of those books. TaxSlayer online in class, got to have computers, got to have Wi-Fi, definitely an issue. Pre-work. Have any of you ever signed pre-work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All my classes last year that were not beginner classes, I made sure that they all had some of the data entry done in TaxSlayer before they came to class, so we weren't waiting on data entry.
That's a great idea, right? So we gave them last year, I haven't figured out what I'm going to do this year. We gave them, we need return up to this point, because we're going to start there. And if you don't have it in, you're going to be behind. And that worked fairly well. I would say 90% of our students came with that stuff done. A little better than the people who did the homework, right? And that definitely moved things along. It meant that we could start right where we wanted to get going. We didn't have to do that basic stuff. Homework is another great way to try and get them to practice. Remember, approach it with, we're just trying to help you solidify the learning, right? By doing this activity on your own. You're going to have to do the proficiency returns. So why not get some practice? Get those started. As you work through your stuff, say, okay, why don't you do all the basic data entry for each of your 4 practice returns? All right, now we've done W-2s. Well, why don't you find the proficiency returns that have W-2s and get those entered? Now we're doing 1099s. That's enter in the 1099s. So that they're doing it right along and they're moving through those. They're not waiting to the very end to try and get all those returns done at once. How do you make sure your students are engaged? Celeste?
Well, if you're teaching from PowerPoints, in Portland we print them and hand them out, but if you're going to be reading them anyways, have the students read them instead of the instructor always reading them.
Reading PowerPoints. How do we feel about reading PowerPoint slides? God.
But sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes you have to show some stuff. So if you're going to be reviewing bullet points having the students read the bullet points and the instructor commenting on it or expanding on the bullet point. At least it keeps them, or have them read the bullet point and then ask a question about it.
Yeah, I'm never a fan of reading bullet points. I'm never a fan of reading slides, because I figure by the time you get here, you all learned how to read. If I can't add value to that slide, it's not a slide that's worthwhile. I can get that information to them in some other way. I got to tell you, I had a college professor. It was in a master's degree program that I was in, and he got up there. It was the first class in computer networking for this master's program. Now you're in a room full of people. We have people who are systems admins for huge defense contractors, Unix systems, and people who are Novell instructors. Novell was a network operating system a long time ago. And Microsoft admins for large corporations. And this guy gets up with this little bitty paperback book, and he opens up to the first chapter, and he says, now, the important thing on page 6. And he proceeded to read us the paragraph out of page 6. And that lasted for about 30 minutes. And the class mutinied. We just flat out mutinied. We told him, in this master's program, there were 14 of us, we told him, he said, either add value or sit down and we'll teach the class. And he got very pouty. And he sat down in the back of the room, and we proceeded to divvy up the topics, and the Unix folks taught us all about Linux, and I taught in the Novell section, and our Microsoft people taught the Novell, the Microsoft part, and our Cisco guy taught us all about routers and switches, and we had a fabulous time. It was the best class in that entire program. So I'm not a fan of reading. I'm not a fan of reading, right? So try not to read. Now, it's something to say, you know what, this is a really important thing. So this thing on this slide is one of the things I want you to focus on. But don't read the slides, because they get really irritated. But ask questions about the slides. I like to ask the questions. So what do we think about X, right? What's the advantage of this? What's the thing we really have to be careful about when we do this thing? Distance learning. So easier to lose a group in a distance learning thing because it's really easy to get distracted, right? Really easy to get distracted. People are doing their email, they're off doing this, they're doing everything but listening to you. It's the one disadvantage of webinars. The advantage, of course, is they can go back and re-listen to that webinar if they catch all the stuff they didn't catch the first time that they were surfing the web. Yeah. When you use any sort of technology, you need to have really, really specific objectives. Really, really specific objectives. And incredibly specific instructions. Because people get lost, and the instructions are the only way they can get back with you. Having a really tight timeline gets you back on track, because they can go, oh, it's 10 o'clock, I should be here. That's probably where they are. They're probably close to there. Because we take mental vacations. We just do. About every 45 seconds, probably. All right, so.
Let me go back to that just as a, if you're doing a webinar, you need to make access to it very clear. We just had one, the tax thing that I tried to get in the other day. I'm reasonably confident. And I could not make it work.
Yeah.
I don't know what the issue was. So
it's the audio channel. I can almost guarantee it was your audio channel.
It's something, but it's got to be easy, and somebody's because, I got lots of things to do. I go duck. So,
Yeah.
You drive for a little bit, and it doesn't get in. It's like I'll watch that some other day.
Yeah, and the thing about the webinars too with WebEx is that the replay is really simple. You click on the link, and it's there. You have everything. Yeah. So, but the live ones are really difficult, and I don't know how to make it simpler. I tried to put that joining a webinar thing that would give people hints. This is the first year that we finally figured out how to get it so that we could use our computer, our headsets on the webinars. It's like, oh, well, that makes life much easier because I don't have to use a phone to dial in. I don't have to put it on speaker between us, and if he gets up and walks around, I don't hear that. Yeah. So it's difficult, and I don't know what the solution is. If you have ideas on how to make that simpler, please let me know.
Well, and those webinars, to me, those are just reading slides. You're looking at slides, and then a lot of information is just being thrown against the wall.
Some of them.
Moving on. thrown against the wall and moving on. It's like you don't even have time to make notes, let alone grasp what's going on with them.
Yeah.
The one from the IRS, for me, I got 2/3 through this and I said, you know, I don't really care about the demographics from last year or 3 years
Yeah, we
ago.
tried to
Why
tell
do
them
we
not
have
to do
that?
those.
This is unimportant for what
Yep.
we're doing.
We tried.
They do their role, and this is an upside and a downside. They do their role as liaison with our programs. So they're really interested in giving us a little bit of feedback as to how we did last year. So
And we cut it way down.
we did cut it way back. I think
Believe
with
it
the
or not.
webinars, technically too, what we tried to do this year was, with the presenters, we tried to just let them present and take the technical parts
Away from
make
them.
it
Yeah.
painless. So we had dry runs with them. We made sure they could get on, and we had their PowerPoint and that they were comfortable with it. I will say that I thought that the webinars we gave, people weren't reading the slides. They had them up there. I think the IRS lady was reading the script, but she was saying other things than what were on the slides. And
Yeah, but it was a lot of information.
It
The
was a lot.
slides are up on the instructor share, so if you want to go back and look at them along with her notes. So everything she said is also in that PowerPoint. So you can go back and look at those.
The webinars are also on the website,
Yes.
so if you want to go and view that, and when she gets to all those stats, just fast forward until
Yep.
she stops talking.
That's the other thing, right?
And the,
Yeah,
and
we
the
did
wrap
try.
up on the IRS, it's like, you told us that already.
Yes.
It's like, okay,
Yes.
I'm out
Yes,
here.
yes, uh-huh. Yeah, when she got to this, she was like, oh, come on, Willette, no. But, you know, IRS are not known for their presentation skills. They're just not.
But the DOR
It's-
came off really well.
Yes, Shannon did a great job.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was good.
So remember, this was an experiment this year. We tried things, we'll try and improve things better. Right? It's always a learning thing. All right, so what I want to do right now is we're actually going to do class management. We'll come back to Bloom's taxonomy here in a second.
Can I make a suggestion
You
on
can.
the webinars? Yeah, I agree that it was like, you know, the slides, people were just talking at us. If you made it interactive and, you know, Ruth, you were kind of posting it.
Oh, I didn't do this.
Ask questions that they would have to answer. So you have kind of a script, not kind of an interview, but make it something a little bit more interactive.
We
I know
had-
that's a lot more work.
Yeah, Charlie had some questions that we did pose to them and tried to get them to clarify some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, we didn't necessarily have their PowerPoints very far in advance.
Sure, and that's
Yeah.
always a problem, so.
All right, so this is where I'm going to go, since I didn't give you an index card. Before we launch into writing objectives, I want to talk a little bit about classroom management. Because this is one of those things that new instructors especially struggle with. We have lovely people, we have lovely counselors, for the most part. Right? They're attentive, they want to learn, they're gregarious type people, they really want to help. And then we have that small percentage, right, that have other agendas. So I want you to think about one of those people. And I didn't hand out index cards, but I want you to think about, just make a note or two, about one of those people in your classrooms. And I don't want to give away any, so you all know what I'm talking about, right? There's always one of those in your classroom. So I want you to just write down a couple of notes about one of those people that cause issues in your classroom. Come on, there's always one. Even in your client facilitator classrooms, Michelle, I know there's at least one. Oh, my thing is really fuzzy, isn't it? That's better.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
You have extra handouts. Since I'm not here, I don't want you to. waste Bob's money. I know you've already got them printed out.
It was,
so-
it was printed on a TaxAide printer, so there's no additional wastage. It's the IRS paying for the paper and the printer.
The IRS doesn't pay for it.
Oh, no, okay, well, the printer maybe came from the IRS. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's one of those 9 from.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of printers we can't.
So, have we thought about this?
Yeah.
Who wants to share? Celeste?
The question asker, the one that is always like trying to stump the teacher.
Ah, the stump the teacher. Yeah.
Sometimes it's because they truly want to know. I had one of those in my class last year, and he turned out to be a very good volunteer, but asking the really difficult questions that really should have been asked outside of class so that you can actually take time to address something way beyond a new volunteer's knowledge base.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just to demonstrate how much knowledge they have.
Yes, sometimes it is.
I have that
So
too, but
stump
no
the
one.
teacher. Stump the teacher is one of those fun ones, right? How do we handle stump the teacher?
Parking lot.
Parking lot. Parking lot, if it's a totally irrelevant question, off topic, parking lots are awesome. Make sure you come back to the parking lot though, right? Bob?
Say I don't know and you don't know.
Say, I don't know. If they ask a question you have no idea, that's a great question, I have no idea. Do not try to bluff your way through it. I'll just give you a word of personal experience, don't try to bluff your way through it. Because guaranteed there's somebody in the room who does know that, and if you're wrong, you look really silly. So I don't know, let me get back to you. And make a note. Put it on your parking lot, and let's talk about that later, because I don't know and we can look it up together.
Or you could say, why don't you research that and let us know tomorrow?
Why don't you research that and come back with the answer? I think that's a great approach, right? Put it right back on them. That sometimes will slow a stump the teacher.
You can start your classes and solve some of those problems by identifying that you are not an expert.
Absolutely.
And it's like, we're gonna come up with something, you guys know, I don't know, that's gonna be fun when we find it, and we'll get the information.
Right
Then
up front.
You don't feel bad when it happens, because it's gonna happen.
It is going to happen. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Great way. Cut it off at the stump, right? All right, so to speak. All right, somebody else. What do we got?
We have a really loud guy that talks, and if you don't tell him what he wants to know, he wants to stop the whole class.
Wow.
Oh, no. And he's a really good tax preparer.
Put him in the parking lot.
Loud.
Yeah.
Abrupt, very abrupt. Military, retired military guy.
Ah, yeah. So what do we think? What's the approach there?
You know, we kind of put up with it.
You put up with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, people kind of spread away from him. Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess it depends on why he's being loud. I mean, if it's a hearing issue that he, you know, or he just can't hear how loud he is, then maybe you put him in the front of the class, because then it's only the instructor that has to deal with it and the people in the back can still hear him. But if it's just he doesn't know any other volume, then don't put him in a site that's a library.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, and if the questions are relevant, then it's not necessarily a bad thing that he's loud, right? If the questions are irrelevant, then we go back to stump the teacher,
Yeah.
right? All right. Awesome, awesome. Another idea. Somebody else. Okay.
I always get the ones that lose their passwords, can't log in, can't open a Chrome window to save their souls, even though they did it 10 times the day before. So it's just that they're challenged on the computer. One day they're fine, the next day it's like, and it's so disruptive, because when you start to go and do it hands-on and their session times out, and it's like, oh my God, where's my password? You know, it's like, I don't know how many times I had people have to create new accounts because they couldn't get back into their original accounts that they created. So
Where's their cheat sheet?
see,
Yeah.
they didn't write it down well
Oh,
enough. They
see.
can't find it.
Yeah.
It's
See, I give them a
amazing.
sheet
The
and I
dog
say,
eat it.
you need to have this sheet with you every time.
Right.
And of course, now what's another option? We talked about this yesterday, right? What's another option?
Yeah, create
You
accounts
create the
ahead of time.
accounts for them.
Yep.
Yep, then you always know.
Yep.
It works for TaxAide. For the training lab, it wouldn't necessarily work you know, for their Lincoln, or not their, yeah, for their Lincoln Learn. You can't exactly create the account for them for Lincoln
No,
Learn.
you can't, but we're talking about TaxSlayer, right?
I created a sheet that the top half is for Practice Lab, and it's user ID and password.
Password, yeah.
The bottom part is for the
portal.
certification. Same thing, user ID and password. I had 2 people lose that sheet within
Yeah.
a matter of days.
Yeah,
You know, it's
yeah.
like, and then
But so your own accounts are, you know, and there's not a lot you can do. Now, the person who is having difficulty with the computer, maybe pairing them up with someone who can help them, right?
But you know, that gets annoying, because if you identify somebody who's really good and put them next to somebody who's not, then you're constantly taking away and
Well, yeah, what I tell my mentors is do your thing first so that you're caught up, and then feel free to help your mentee, so that they don't feel like it's being taken away from them. So let them, and if your mentee gets stuck, just, you know, let them know, you know, your mentor is going to get their work done, and then they'll be happy to help you, right? Yeah.
Something, I was just thinking about it, for those that require that they bring in their 4491 with them to class, if you're requiring physical stuff, do the sticky name labels and have it like print off, you know, TaxSlayer, you know, stuff, write it on the sticky label, because if you're requiring that they bring their book with them and the label is on the front cover of their book, they have their password as long as they have their book. So it's less likely to get lost in the shuffle.
A separate piece of paper. That's an idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Super. All right, let's get one more.
Okay, Bob says I can speak. We have an individual that has a personal agenda. He has an item that he is familiar with, and he uses a tax credit on the state of Oregon, Oregon culture, donations. Every time you get into the subject of Oregon, he will bring up how to use it to your advantage, where to get the information from the Oregon culture, how beneficial it is, da 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 da. And it is rough to avoid him. He's done this 3-4 years now. And he is willing to sit in as a mentor in the newbies, and he will do this to them too. I say, no, you need, so I give him 30 seconds, okay, so in case someone is interested, talk to him offline during break. You can go see him and he'll give you more information on this, but I'm on a time schedule. Yeah, I'm not sure I would even give him 30 seconds. I think the minute he opens his mouth, I would say, you know what, Oregon Cultural Trust is a really interesting credit, but it's not within our objectives for today. So if you have more questions about that, feel free to talk to him offline. But I would cut him off instantly. But he's not the type that he understands he's been cut off. Is the frustration.
So, Steve, I think that's a great idea. We really, it's a fabulous credit, but we're going to move on. Yeah. So if anyone wants to talk to Steve about the Oregon Cultural Trust, go ahead and you can talk to him at break.
He wants to be recognized for his passion and his knowledge about the Oregon Trust. And if you can work that in right at the beginning to cut him off, and acknowledge that without him saying any word in front of the whole class.
Yep.
He's your guy. Talk to him at break. He's looking for that recognition.
Yeah. But if he tries to come up again, I think it's a great idea, a great solution. But if he tries to bring it up during class, I would cut him off and say that's really outside of what we need to do right now. But I wouldn't let him even get started. Best that you can, really. Yeah.
You could also work on getting him into you know what, every year you bring this up, it's such a great thing. Why don't you create a one-page on it that you can hand out, and I'll give you 30 seconds to hand it out, or you can just set them on the table, and if someone wants to know more, they can take it home with them. And then if he does a good job with actually detailing about it, then you slowly start bringing him in as an instructor for other topics.
No. No. That works for some people. That might work for some people. I'm getting the sense that that's not a good choice for this person. Yes. Because I suspect he's a one horse.
One trick pony.
One trick pony, thank you, that was what I was looking for, yeah. All right, let's do one last one, and then I want to talk about your assignment. Okay? Yes, Tom?
People who dominate the presentation, they're always interjecting questions, they're always asking comments, it's always the same person, and they can take you down the wrong path and just be so disruptive.
Here's my solution. I come stand right next to you. Works great for the talkers.
You can keep talking, John.
So I can stand right next to you. So for the person who is trying to overtake, and we have one of those.
Yeah, we do.
Yep. I've taken him aside, during break, and said, you have great ideas, but we need to keep on our schedule, because otherwise we're never going to get through it. So I simply ask them to cut back. If they have a genuine question, that's amazing. But I'm not afraid to take somebody aside and say, you're being disruptive to the class, and it's not really helpful. And it's a really uncomfortable conversation to have, and I try and have it off by the self. I actually got the DC involved on one of them, because he came back the same thing. Our guy isn't, he's an attorney, isn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, I know, it's not that attorneys are all bad, but in this case, he's one of those stump the teacher know-it-alls who thinks he needs to interject at every opportunity, and it's just a matter of taking control back of your classroom and being able to take them aside and say, I know that you're really knowledgeable about this, and I really appreciate that. And I try, when I get to a place, I can say, do you have something you want to add to that, Dan? Which gives him an opportunity to express, because what he's looking for is recognition, but it also then allows me to take control back of my classroom. So don't be afraid to talk to these people, right? And indicate, because a lot of times they don't realize they're being disruptive to your classroom. And so, just a friendly conversation about that can help. Sometimes it doesn't, and you just have to kind of go, okay, thanks, and you move on. You just acknowledge and move on. Don't discuss, don't add, just move on. And that helps to kind of it helps cut the disruption. But there's no gentle way to do that, other than the conversation that you can have and hope that makes an impact. All right. Anything else somebody's burning to share with us? All right. Classroom management is one of those things you have to take control, because if you don't take control of your classroom, you won't get where you're going. Yep, somebody else will, exactly. Okay. I want to talk about page 2 of the handout. So when I talked yesterday about what my objective was for you for this course, was to have you do presentations in groups of 2. So I want you thinking about who you want to partner with. And this is what you will do, right? You're going to develop objectives. You're going to figure out a tax lesson plan. So originally I was going to give you 20 minutes, but I'm going to cut that back because I'm going to do a module on consents. I think we need to talk about the consent forms and look at them. I have a few here, and I think we need to have some conversations about that. So I'm going to cut you back to probably 10 to 15 minutes. Okay? I want you to think about your objectives. So using Bloom's taxonomy, I want you to write 3 or 4 objectives. Isn't Bloom's taxonomy in there? I may have stolen it from that packet.
That's fine. It's landscape, right?
Yeah, it's landscape. Here you go. I stole it from that one. So you're going to write some objectives for your module. Just make it a bite-sized module. And then I want you to start thinking about how you will assess. I always go to assessments before I go to my presentation methods. Because I've got to figure out what is it I want them to be able to do, and then how am I going to know that they got there. And then I look at how do I present this information in a way that's going to allow me to get to my assessment. So that's the order that I like to work on. Since I don't have my, do you have my draft? The Bloom's taxonomy handouts?
Yeah.
I don't remember what else was on it. There's another packet here. Think about assessments, and then think about whatever content you're going to use, whatever slides that are out there, or handouts that you may want to use. You don't actually have to prepare the handouts. Everybody's got a computer here, so you can use electronic 4012s. Everyone should have brought their 4491. I asked you to bring the 4491. That's why, because you can use that as helping you develop your lesson plan. There's good information there. I would suggest you not use their objectives, because they're not, all of them aren't well written. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And then whatever resources you're going to use, right? I also want you to think about overall evaluation, because we'll talk about evaluations. How do we do evaluation? That whole section. So for the next 7 minutes, I want you to write one objective, just one objective. That was back in the other PowerPoint. It was a toss-up. Do I throw classroom management into lesson planning? Do I not? So I want you to write one objective for me. Bloom's taxonomy is awesome. You have examples of objectives that are on here. There are 2 sets of examples of objectives, so you can see what they look like. But I want you to pick a topic, any topic, that you might teach in one of your classes, and write an objective for it, just so you get some practice. Okay? Grab David's packet here so I have
I was going to do that yesterday, a no-show, but I said, nah, I better not do it.
No,
It's coming in the second day.
David's?
Well, that's fine.
Well, that's okay with me. Sure.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But you may have booted it out of the one that Steve has.
Yeah, well, I don't know if everything.
Should we be in pairs now?
John has a question.
Should we be in pairs?
No, just work on this one yourself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's the Jeopardy.
You might be willing to do that, because a lot of people do a section on each and say,
Vote.
yeah.
That's what I'm looking at right now.
We are seeing a lot more than we encourage all of our counselors to take pages. So we include it as part of our training.
So that's what it takes you.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, even in the 4491, it says there's an entire section on Lincoln Learn on HSA.
Oh, I know.
It's got its own training. This is what you can't even get it instead of training.
Yeah. That's what I had.
I developed
Improvising.
I am, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I had assigned them, but I decided not to sign them. I decided to let them choose.
That's good. They're reading the group.
There's a list of some possible modules up there for if you're struggling for a particular module. Now, since you're doing client facilitator training, you may want to do something a little differently than those. Yes, because those are clearly tax lessons.
Right.
So yeah, you may want to do something about the consents. Looking at those.
Yes, that's probably going to be a biggie.
I'll even show you the booklet so that you have some ideas of what you're dealing with. Yeah.
I have
Oh, okay.
those, but.
Yeah. The Jeopardy game does qualify. It does qualify. Absolutely, it is an authorized alternative to the policies and procedures training.
But they're on schedule. They're on
Yeah.
schedule.
Everybody. It's authorized.
No, not the
I didn't envision that.
You may not envision it, but that is what the NTTC has told me.
That's a basic requirement.
It is basic requirement. Policies and procedures, it satisfies the requirements. We're going to talk more about that. We are going to talk more about that. We're actually going to do one, and we'll talk about the approved alternatives as well as the 48 slides.
I tried to make these changes a little bit for ours, and I couldn't do it.
Okay, I'll show you where it is, so you can download it and make modifications. Although the problem with it is that the modifications are not authorized by the NTTC. They went through my slides and they picked questions and answers, and that's what they authorized was my
Okay,
questions.
but some of them, there's a couple of them that just didn't.
Now, I made some updates this year.
Okay.
So the 2018, we refined two of the questions because they were a little confusing. There was one about dependent child, a child of a child of a child, a child of a, anyways, we clarified that one, and there was another one that got clarified.
Okay.
So we should look at the, listen, we'll do it in here, yeah. But that's certainly one that you could look at and look at the alternatives. That it's actually, oh no, it's not in your packet. So we didn't put it in there because the answers to the Jeopardy game are in the alternative document, and so I didn't put it in the packet. They want people studying up. Not the B word.
But different schools have different ways of instructing.
Alrighty, how are we doing? Anybody have any questions on objectives? Questions? No questions? All right, let's have a break. We'll come back in 15 minutes. I have 10 o'clock, so we'll come back at 10:15 on the money. And I am going to stop this guy so that they can take a break.
I took it.